something that I'm revisiting lately is the need to be clear about when I'm meeting my own needs and when I'm projecting my unmet needs onto somebody or something within my life. We all know the high rate of shift and change that we're all undergoing at this point. And I believe from my own experience that I'm projecting an unmet need onto. So this is very important because as I delayer this and I work through this, you have to get radically honest with yourself about actually what are your needs, trying to get in touch with the authentic story of really who you are. And you have to almost start from scratch. You have to kind of reverse everything that's going on within your current reality. You kind of have to put the pause button on your life for a second and really go within and go back to the beginning, in essence, in a way, and say to yourself, okay, right now, like what actually are my immediate needs aside from all of the stories and everything going on within my external reality? Get very clear on what is it that I need and where do I feel like I'm meeting my own needs and where do I feel like I'm not meeting my own needs. Now, when we start to get clear on this, I've also discovered a little bit of a next step is to, in this radical honesty with yourself, is you have to look at two sides of this coin. So there is an overt side, an obvious side in which you may be projecting to get your needs met. But then the more pernicious or the shadow side of this is when you're covertly or it's really deeply embedded within your unconscious about how you're actually manipulating things within your mind to see things or to orchestrate or kind of mold your reality. And these things require a bit of introspection, really deep, honest introspection, because often it's our blind spots. And it's difficult to see our blind spots unless somebody really calls you out or you're in some sort of a circumstance where it becomes radically obvious. And it can be a little shocking if somebody really calls you out on a blind spot. One thing about something I saw recently, I think it was John Vervaeke saying that, you know, we should actively be seeking out our blind spots. Like if you are in any sort of relationship, which we're all in relationships, right? With our boss, with our family, with our partners, with our children, anybody who's trying to improve as a human being should be seeking out their own blind spots. And this is something that the society we live in doesn't talk about, doesn't really promote, doesn't quite really truly understand. Uh, and then if it is reflected onto us from someone else, we often demonize that external mean when they're showing us something that deeply lives within us that we aren't ready to admit to or we feel is a false accusation. But often some of those things are actually quite true. And this is really the essence of what's happening when you're doing some shadow work or some deep introspection to find your blind spot is the willingness to sit with what's uncomfortable and really try to distill the truth within that and ask yourself, oh, maybe I am doing that. And then why am I doing that? Right. Yeah. You have to kind of face yourself, which is a little dysregulating, confronting. And then there has to be this space for grace and mercy to say, actually, why am I doing that? Why am I projecting that? Or what am I truly feeling about that? So you're going back in and you're becoming consciously aware of the story that you're projecting, of the narrative and the people within your life and your story that you have around you. You're coming to it now from a deeper sense of clarity. And when this process starts to happen, as we've seen, sometimes we begin to notice that actually a lot of my story is a projection based off of an unmet need. Or the covert aspect of that would be I've cultivated this story that looks pretty good to the external world, right? My persona may look sparkly clean or my life or my career or what I'm showing to the public, but really actually deep within me, I'm unhappy. My needs are unmet. And then I'm seeking out ways to escape in like the shadowlands, right? So, you know, maybe you escape to I don't know, overeat, or you escape to watch porn, or you escape to drink, or have inappropriate conversations. Like that all is a sign of us not being in proper alignment. And we somehow in society would rather feel more comfortable with normalizing the ways we disassociate from our story than to take responsibility for the fact that we've actually cultivated this story. And yes, maybe we've made commitments, or we've taken on careers, or we've taken on relationships that now seem to hold and bear a lot of weight. And this is where often people will say that, oh, well, I feel stuck, right? Because now I've cultivated this story that at one point in my life felt like it was the right story, but I'm coming to conscious realization that I made this story up based off of what I wanted to project myself as out into the world, or I made this story up because I wasn't aware of my own unmet needs, or I wasn't really aware of myself. And now I have this big story that everybody believes in my life that's not really truly me. This is a crucial, critical moment in time. And I believe that what we're seeing is that we're being challenged and compressed to face this. Whereas in the past, there were so many ways to escape and dissociate and find other friends who were dissociators and do these things to normalize your dysfunctional job or relationships or whatever it may be. Now is the time we're being called forth, whether we like it or not, whether we want to or not, to face our reality and to face the ways in which we've cultivated stories that were based off of our unmet needs, and being called to admit defeat, reorganize from a healthy conscious standpoint and point of view, and then courageously actually speak your truth and be willing to go through the process of reconstruction. The another fear is the deconstruction, right? Or deconstructing your story, and what is that going to look like in the world for people? That's another fear. That's another, that's a real fear, right? That you might cultivate some sort of a disappointment, or people may judge you, or people may think that somehow, whatever, it doesn't matter what people think, because very often they have similar circumstances that maybe they're just not courageously facing within themselves. So this concept of, reputation, or what are people going to think, really needs to be, it's a real big collective shadow, because we then stay stuck in these fake personas, and it actually hurts everybody. And somebody showing up with the honesty in a scene, in a workspace, in a relationship, will help to free other people. But we get caught in that, well, what's going to happen first, and the judgment that may arise, or people changing how they see us. If you want to truly evolve and cultivate a story that really is aligned with who you are on a conscious level, on a self-aware level, that's part of the process, is facing this outer judgment of what you've cultivated and taking responsibility for the fact, I did what I did at a time when I had the information that I had, and my intentions may have been good, maybe they weren't good, but most of us, the intentions are good. But then we start to realize, we start to self-realize, we start to get to know thyself, right? And then this is where the difficulty comes in, because we realize, oh, I'm actually not aligned with what I've aligned myself to be involved in, right? And now I have to change, the dreaded word change, or continue to try to scramble to normalize the situation, seek the others out who are still normalizing the dysfunction. But the issue is that once you have that glimmer of sight or vision, that, wow, what I'm aligning with actually isn't for my best, it's not healthy for me, and it's actually not healthy for the other people, is that you can't unsee. You can try to unsee, but usually it becomes more and more and more painful to then try to disassociate yourself. And this is when worse things happen, right? It's almost like the things you were escaping with can become amplified. You may try something more drastic to disassociate. Addictions come into play because there's just an inability, there's too much weight to really try to face ourselves and face reality. So, yeah, so covertly, overtly is important. Again, like sometimes it's obvious of how we project unmet needs and what we do to disassociate from our situations that may not feel aligned with us. But sometimes this shadow work is really, really, really going deep to see the ways in which you covertly, nicely, right? It's like the nice guy syndrome, the nice girl syndrome, the people pleaser. Like, how actually are you trying to control reality very deep within you, manipulate reality, and it's coming out as the good girl or the nice guy? Those are actually, that's the shadow. That to me is actually can be more pernicious, right? So it's and dangerous when we aren't willing to really see those shadows. And that's really where I believe our culture actually is at, is where we're projecting these shadows, these unmet needs that are very deep within our psyche that we can't see. And it's cultivating a lot of disorientation and disorganization within the field, within our reality. I'm hoping that with chaos is somehow this unseen thread that's helping us to distill what actually is truth, right? But then there's all of these things being shaken up in the meantime, and it looks externally like a mess, right? So hopefully this thread line, this truth, this actual truth is being distilled out of many situations, so we can actually start to reconstruct, regenerate, align with actually what's good for us. So then all of a sudden, life looks very different. Life looks very different. We're not normalizing dysfunction. We're not over medicating. We're not escaping. We're not as addicted. We're not cheating. We're not whatever it is. You become you becoming more aligned. And I know this because I've done this for myself and I still work this process every single day. But getting more aligned, you naturally do the right thing, right? So often you see, for example, in workplaces, them cultivating programming to mitigate and try to solve downstream problems when they don't even actually really know the root of the problem. And they don't know actually within themselves how to align with the actual causal, what caused the problem to begin with. So we're treating all of these effects. I mean, this is healthcare in general, right? The shadow of healthcare is that we treat effects and we really truly don't understand many causes. And they want to provide this element of feeling better for people. But does it really make you feel better when you don't understand? When you feel like a victim to your reality and you're just getting that downstream pill or effect to try to make you feel better? At some point, maybe that works for some people, but at some point a soul will seek to understand. A soul will seek to cultivate meaning within their experience. And you can't discover the meaning when you're overly medicated, right? It just creates like a veil. It's very, very hard to go that deep into the unconscious and see yourself accurately.